How does a big, successful business change course and stay cutting edge? Not easily. In the book, 10 Rules for Strategic Innovators, author Chris Trimble writes that businesses wanting to maintain excellence but look to the future must learn to forget certain assumptions, borrow resources from their core business, and learn how the new business can succeed. It's our pleasure to welcome Chris Trimble to Serious Money. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Thomas. Terrific to be here.
And before we discuss the book specifically, it seems one of the buzzwords going around, you read in Business Week and other places, is sort of the creative economy, that we're struggle with manufacturing here in the United States, and the know-how is going off in other countries, China and India, but this creative economy is the thing that's going to keep the U.S. strong. What is a creative economy, and how important is that to the future of the U.S.?
I think it's very, very important. Companies are much better at creativity and idea generation than they were, say, a decade ago. But one of the important things that we learned in our project is that in any great innovation story, the idea is only chapter one. And then there's a very, very difficult business building challenge. The challenges that you face in actually turning an idea into a profitable business are what we were most interested in. So creativity is crucial, but execution is also important if you want to get results out of your efforts to innovate.
I told my son, my 13-year-old son, I was doing this interview, and I was struggling because I'd read the book a little bit, and there was a lot of, he said, well, just ask him what strategic innovation is and then sort of go from there. So what is strategic innovation?
Yeah, it's important to differentiate strategic innovation from other kinds of innovations that are not quite as dramatic. Maybe they improve existing processes or enhance existing products or services. A strategic innovation really changes some of the fundamental elements that define what your business is, like who your customers are, or what value you offer them, or what areas of expertise you have to have if you're going to succeed. When you start to change those answers, you really have to make some dramatic organizational steps as well, whereas some of the other types of innovation you can actually handle within the organization that you already have.
Can you give us some examples or an example of how that's worked?
Sure. You know, one of my favorite stories from this research is that of the New York Times Company and their effort to build their internet unit, New York Times Digital. What made it so interesting was the evolution through several different organizational designs until they finally struck the balance that would work. It's sort of a tenet of innovation that if you want to build a new business, it has to be a separate organization. But what exactly does that mean? Separate how? What are the interactions between the two? New York Times Digital evolved into what we call a distinct but linked organization. They truly did build this business from the ground up, but they didn't isolate it from the core business. They created some very carefully managed, carefully selected links between the two so that the digital unit had all the advantages of access to great assets like the New York Times brand and New York Times content.
One thing you point out that people I think will find interesting, and New York Times obviously a pretty big company, and we've got some big companies here in the Northwest, Microsoft, for example, that I know you spoke to, but one point you make is interesting, that these big companies can do this as well as smaller, nimble companies. People are going to be scratching their head over that one a bit.
You don't have to be all that old before strategic innovation becomes very difficult, and I think it's one of the tough lessons that young companies have learned. And it's one of the lessons in my visit to Seattle that really resonated with folks from companies like, say, Amazon.com that are still feeling very, very young, but have as much process and structure as much, much older companies. And thus, strategic innovation in any company that has a successful and profitable model is very challenging. It requires this distinct but linked approach that we described in the book.
Well, and one thing you talk about, too, is that you need, to get the strategic innovation, you need to take things from the old company and sort of keep some of those, throw some of them out, and develop a sort of a new culture in a way, correct?
That's exactly right. We identify 3 challenges, in fact, that are central in building a new business within an established organization. One is the forgetting challenge. That is, you've got to walk away from your established success formula. The second one is the borrowing challenge. You don't want to do this in complete isolation because you want the benefit of those great resources within the core business. And the last is the learning challenge, as in you have to learn how to succeed in a new and uncertain market. When everybody went to college, they forgot, borrowed, and learned. They forgot their parents' rules, they borrowed their laundry facilities, and they learned how to succeed on their own terms. It's the same challenge for organizations, it's just a lot trickier. Is
innovation the key to having a successful company?
It is over the long term. In any market, no matter what it is, growth potential is going to decline. And in some markets, it's going to be worse than that. Your company itself is going to be threatened. And so if you're going to succeed over periods of decades, you have to renew yourself. You have to renew yourself by launching new businesses and creating new businesses of the future, not focus only on managing the business of the present.
There have been, of course, very innovative companies that have imploded. I mean, Enron, I think, was picked the most innovative company of the year for like 4 years in a row,
Indeed.
99 through somewhere back there, and they imploded. What goes wrong that makes those companies blow up?
Tom, nobody ever said innovation is risk-free. There's, whether you're talking about a startup or a new business within an established company, the odds are long against you. That doesn't mean you don't do it. That means you do it in a structured and careful way. Mm-hmm. And if you are doing it within an established organization, you're particularly cognizant of the structure that exists to support the core business and how it might get in the way of the new one.
Here in the Northwest, of course, Microsoft has a huge impact that sort of unseen in a way because it's out in Redmond, but certainly hiring a lot of people and big market share. But there are those who look at it and say, well, it's just become way too bureaucratic today. There isn't much innovation. What's your take on Microsoft?
If you go talk to some of the people at Microsoft, you'll hear some of that exact angst from Microsoft employees themselves. They are concerned about their future. They are concerned about innovation. They've also had some great success stories. What they've done with Xbox is phenomenal, considering how different that business model is from their core business. And some of the hoops that they had to jump through to do that are very much in line with what we saw at other companies doing similar things.
How different will U.S. companies look, or the U.S. economy look 5 or 10 years from now, in your view? A lot different?
It will look a lot different. It seems that the pace of change is only getting faster and faster all the time. One of the important points that we make in the book is that nobody can really predict the future. You have to put a stake in the ground and make a bet for a new business. The real key is to whatever guesses you make to resolve them as quickly as possible, to learn as quickly as possible, so you can either get out before you lose too much money or zero in quickly on something that works.
Chris Trimble, thanks for joining us here on Serious Money.
Absolute pleasure, Tom. Thank you for having me.